Exactly. You want us to do financing decision? What do you remember in financing decision? Or remember nothing? You remember cost of capital? You remember Wakaka, eh? Or remember geared, eh? Geared and ungeared. Actually, that's what you need to be concerned with. Eh? The application of WACC, Morgan and Mira. That's a question that never misses. Can carry even 20 marks. Eh? Cost of capital, which is on a value of ungeared firm, the value of the levered firm, how to get cost of equity of levered firm and levered firm, determining the financial implication of the use of the debt, assumptions of those theories, etc. So this is AFM, and we are doing Brooks revision. And you are doing financing decision. Actually, if you're a smart student, because I want to do like 6 or 8 questions. If you're a smart student, you just need to listen. Once you listen this, you don't have even to revise this topic again. So go and focus on other things. Don't have to focus. We can't do cost of capital today. You want to revise it tomorrow, the other day. Don't you have other topic to revise on? Portfolio, you have nothing to revise. So already formulation here. Yeah, so you should be revising sensitivity. Sensitivity, that one you have to revise. Even if we do 10 questions. Eh? Yeah, so that one, I mean the capital risk analysis in capital budgeting. That's another widest topic. Eh? It comes with the various, you see that one has no specific formula. Based on the information given, it's upon you now to determine how to structure your information to get NPV. But at least for financing decision, the question is straightforward. Compute WACC, value of ungeared firm, portfolio is straightforward. So that for risk analysis. So now let's do May 2016. May 2016. May 2016, question 3. On 1st January 2016, Mavuno Limited was in the process of raising funds to undertake 4 investment projects. This project requires a total of 30 million shillings. Given below are details relating to the 4 investment projects, we have project A to D, required initial investment, internal rate of return. Additional information. The company has 9 million available from the retained earnings as at 1st of January 2016. Any extra equity finance would have to be sourced through an issue of new ordinary shares. The market price per ordinary share on 1st of January 2016 was 25.6x dividend. Information on earnings per share and the dividend per share over the last 6 years is as follows. So once we are given that information, the dividend and EPS for the past, we have to use that information to determine the growth rate using the compounding method. Number 3, issue of new ordinary share would attract a flotation cost of 4.6 per share. Number 4, 9% irredeemable debenture, par value is 1,000 shillings each, could be sold with a net proceed of 95% due to a discount on issue of 2% and a flotation cost of 30 shillings per debenture. The maximum amount available from the issue of 9% redeemable debenture would be 4 million, after which the debt could only be obtained at 12% interest with a net proceed of 90% of the par value. Number 5, 10% preference share can be issued at par value of 80 shillings. The company capital structure, which is considered optimal, is as follows: equity is 45%, preference share capital is 30%, debenture capital is 25%. The corporate tax rate applicable is 30%. The company has to exhaust its internally generated funds before raising an extra fund from the external sources. Required, number A, the level of total new financing at which the break occur in the WMCC. So number A, we're asking about the break point. And we say that to get the break point, you take the amount to raise, you divide by the weight or the proportion. And in this case, when determining the break point, you only determine for the source of capital which is specific. For example, number 1, we have for the retained earnings, and also we have for the debt. Retained earning number 1, you're told that the company has 9 million available from the retained earnings. So retained earnings, the amount is 9. You divide by the weight, number 6. Retained earning is part of the equity, so you divide by 0.45. Then we have the debt. Note number 4. 9% redeemable debenture par value 1,000 could be sold with a net proceed of 95 due to a discount on issue of 2% and a flotation cost of that shillings per debenture. The maximum amount available from the issue of 9% irredeemable debenture would be 4 million. So this 9%, the maximum we can raise is 4 million. Then its proportion, note number 6, debenture capital, the weight is 25%. So 4, 8, this is 16. 9 over 0.45, you get 20. Good. Number B. The weighted marginal cost of capital for each of the 3 ranges of levels of total financing as determined in A above. So WMCC. So how do we get WMCC? It's weight of equity, cost of equity, weight of preference, cost of preference, weight of the debt, cost of the debt, 1 minus T. So you have to compute all those costs. We already have the weights, we don't have the cost. So we start with equity. So the equity, we have the cost of retained earnings, we have the cost of ordinary share, we have the cost of preference, then we have 2 debts. How do we get the cost of retained earnings? It's DO 1 plus G, PO growth rate. How do we get the cost of ordinary share? DO 1 plus the growth rate, PO, you deduct the flotation cost, you add the growth rate. Cost of preference share, you take the interest or the dividend, you divide by the value of the preference, you multiply by 100%. Cost of the debenture or the cost of the debt. This one we are told that 9% irredeemable. For redeemable debt, to get the cost, you take the interest over the value of the debt, 1 minus t. Then for the equity and ordinary share, you are not given the growth rate, but using the compounding method, how do we get the growth rate? It's dn over do n the root minus 1. Let's go to note number 2. Note number 2. Note number 2, we have dividend per share from 2010, 2011. Now for 2010, can you write as DO? 2011, D1, D2, D3, until the end. So therefore, to get the growth rate, you take the DN. DN is the last dividend to be paid, that's 2015. And the dividend is 3.5. DO, that's for 2010. The amount was 2.5. And how many years? 5. Good. 5 minus 1. So give me that. You multiply by 100%, give me as a rate. 6.9. It's approximately 7 per. Sako, have you gotten that? Are you sure? Can you do this? 3.5 divided by 2.5 equals. Do you know how to get the fifth root? How? There is no shift. Press 5. Shift. Raise to power. Answer. Just say my equals. And then you minus 1. You get 7%. So now let's get the cost of retained earnings. How much is our DO? DO? Hey, now we are getting the cost of retained earnings. You just take DO. How much is DO? Sorry? Good. 3.5. 1 plus the growth rate, which is 7, 0.07. PO is the market price per share. Note number 2. Then you add the growth rate, which is 0.07. Then for the cost of ordinary share, you take DO, which is 3.5. 1 plus the growth rate, 0.07. PO is 25.6. Then you deduct any flotation cost. Number 3, issue of new ordinary share would attract a flotation cost of 4.6. And then you add the growth rate, 0.07. So give me that. Sorry? 21.6%. $24.8. Then you go to the cost of preference share. Note number 5. 10% preference share can be issued at par value. Now, if you issue any security at par value, the cost of capital will not change. So the 10% preference share, the cost of capital will still remain to be 10%. So, okay, let me prove that. Interest is 10% preference share. So take 10%. How much is the par value of the preference share? 80. Then you divide by the value of the preference share, and you are told that we'll issue the preference share at par value, which is still 80 times 100. 8 over 80, that's 100, it's 10%. Let's go to the cost of the debt. Note number 4. 9% irredeemable debenture par value 1,000 could be sold with a net profit of 95% due to a discount of 2% and a flotation cost of 30 per debenture. Now that 30 is equivalent to 3%. So 3 plus 2, you get that 5. So how do we get the interest? We are told it's 9%. We say that interest is based on the par value. The par value is 1,000. You divide by the value of the debt, could only be issued at the net profit of 95%. So you take 95% of this par value, 1,000. 1 minus t, 0.7. You do 90 divided by 950 times 0.7. 6 point? 6.63. Then, yes, also told that the maximum amount available from the issue of 9% redeemable debenture would be 4 million, after which a debt could only be obtained at 12% interest with a net proceed of 90. So there is another debt at 12%, par value is 1,000, but will be issued with a net proceed of 90%. So it's 90% of the par value, 1,000, 1 minus T. So 120 divided by 900. Sorry? Can't be 19, 13, multiplied by 0.7. 9.33%. So now we can determine our WACC. We have all the costs. So our WACC, how many WACC do we compute? So to determine the WACC to compute, you'll be guided by the breakpoint. So let's be here. We had the breakpoint for retained earnings, which so that means under the equity, anything between 0 to 20, we shall use the cost of the retained earnings, which is cheaper at 21.6%. Anything under equity above 20, that's when we go to issue of new ordinary share, which is expensive at 24. So the rate will be 24.8%. Also, you have the breakpoint for the debt, this 16 million. So anything between 0 to 16, that's when you go to this 9% debenture, of which the is cheaper at 6.63. Now, anything above 16 million under the debt, we'll have to issue now the other expensive debenture at 12% with a net cost of 9.33%. So how many WACC do we compute? 0. So you look at the breakpoint, the minimum we have is 16. Above 16 to 20, and then 20 and above. So you need to compute 3 breakpoints. And how do we get WACC? Is the weight of equity, cost of equity, weight of preference, cost of preference, weight of the debt, cost of the debt, 1 minus T. Weight of equity, you are given in note number 6. It's 45, so it's 0.45. You multiply by the cost of equity. So the cost of equity will be guided by the breakpoint. Anything below 20 is the cost of retained earnings, which is 21.6. And then anything above 20, we issue new shares, which is expensive at 24.8. Then weight of the preference share, preference is 30%, so it's 0.3. You multiply by the cost of preference. The cost of preference was constant at 10%. And then you add the weight of the debt. The weight of the debt, the debenture capital is 25%, 0.25. Then you multiply by the cost of the debt. So the cost of the debt will be guided by the breakpoint, which is 16. Anything between 0 to 16, the rate will be 6.63. 6.63. If it exists 16, we should the other one expensive at 9.33. 9.33. $14.8%. 15.05%. This one is let's go to part C of the question. Part C. Advise Mavuno Limited on the projects to undertake, assuming that the project are divisible. Which project to undertake? You should only undertake the project, only undertake the project if IRR is greater than WMCC. And then we say that you rank the project or you undertake the project in their priority of their IRR. So rank project cost, accumulated cost, then you compare IRR against WMCC, then you comment whether to undertake or to reject the project. We have 4 projects, rank 1, 2, 3, 4. Which is project rank number 1? A. A. A, D, C, and then A require cost of how much? How much is it? IRR? 26. D requires a capital of 6. IRR is 22. C requires a capital of 9. IRR is 20. And then lastly, B requires 7. IRR is 16. Now let's accumulate the cost. This is 8. 8 plus 6, you get 14. 14 plus 9, you get 23. 23 plus 7, you get 30. Now let's get WMCC. To determine the WMCC, use the accumulated cost. Accumulated cost here. 8 lies in between 0 to 16. Therefore, the WMCC will be 14.8. 14 lies still in between 0 to 16. WMCC will be 14.8. 23, 20 and above. So WMCC will be 16.49, 16.49. 26, 14. Accept, reject. This one you accept. Accept, reject. Reject, accept. What about this? Reject. So therefore, the optimal capital budget, you have to undertake the 3 projects, A, D, C, and their combined accumulated cost is 23 million. And that one you have answered even part 2 of the question. Determine the optimal capital budget. Let's take a screenshot of that. November 2018. November 2018. Question 5C. Embakasi Investment Limited contemplates to determine its optimal capital structure, which currently consists of only debt and common equity. The company does not use preference share in its capital structure and does not plan to do so in the near future. In order to estimate how much its debt would cost at different debt level, the company's financial controller has consulted with the investment bank and the following information was obtained. So we are given debt to equity ratio, 0. We have that. Then we have the board rating. Then we have the before tax cost of the debt. Additional information. The company uses CAPM to estimate the cost of capital. The risk-free rate of return is 5%. Market risk premium 8%. Corporate tax rate 30%. The company uses Hamada model to determine the levered equity beta. The asset beta for unlevered equity beta is 1.2. Required, the optimal capital structure. Optimal capital structure. And we say that the optimal capital structure is where the value of the company is maximum and WACC is minimum. So optimal capital structure is where the value of the firm is maximum and WACC is minimum. So based on the information provided, the only thing we can be able to compute is WACC. And we are told that number one, the company uses CAPM to estimate the cost of capital. So under CAPM, RS, and we say that RS is not the cost of capital, it's the cost of equity. It's only the cost of capital if the company is all equity financed. And RS is risk-free, expected return of the market, risk-free you multiply by the beta, where we say that expected return of the market minus risk-free, this is what we call the risk premium. So let's do that. So we have bond rating, then you determine RS, which is risk-free, expected return of the market minus risk-free, you multiply by the beta. So for the bond rating, we have A. Then how much is the risk-free rate? The risk-free rate is 5. Then you add, so you're already given the market risk premium. That's not the expected return of the market, that's the risk premium. So that's expected return of the market minus risk-free, of which it's 8. Then you multiply by the beta. How much was the beta? Very wrong. That's the beta of equity. But in this case, those are the bonds. So that means the debt. So you need to compute the beta of levered firm. And you are told that the company, number 5, the company uses Hamada model to determine the levered equity beta. How do you get the beta of the levered firm? Is the beta of ungeared 1 plus debt over equity 1 minus T. So the beta of ungeared we have is 1.2. Then you take 1, you add debt to equity ratio. I've already given the debt to equity ratio. Here is 0. We have 0.25, 0.6, 1.7, 2.5. Then you multiply by 1 minus T. Tax rate was 30, so it's 0.7. The first one is 1.2. And kindly apply board mass. You just take 0.25 multiplied by 0.7 you add 1, then you multiply by 1.2. 1.41. $1.7, 2.6, 3.3. So those are beta. So here you take that, you multiply by the beta, 1.2, 1.41, 1.7, 2.6, and 3.3. So give me now the cost of capital. 14.6%. The last one? Sorry? That 1.4%. That one? 18.6%. Point? 8.28. 25.8. But we are not looking at the cost of equity. We are looking at the cost of optimal capital, where we need to determine WACC. So how to determine WACC? So board rating, WACC, weight of equity, cost of equity, weight of the debt, cost of the debt, 1 minus T. So let's start with board A. So you take the weight of equity. Do we have the equity? Can you see the debt to equity ratio? So the first one, the debt to equity ratio, that's the value of the debt. It's 0. That means equity will be? Where? If the debt is 0, do you expect equity to be? It's 1, right? So it will be 1. And the second one will be 0.75. The third one will be 0.4. The fourth one will be chukua 1 minus venye ulikuwa unafanya. Itakuwa ngapi? Negative. Okay. What about the last one? So mlikuwa mmesonga vizuri. The second one is 0.75, 0.4, 1.7, 2.5. Now what's happening now to the weight of the equity? Makwamia tatu, yeah, tuendelee hapa. Weight of equity for A, the debt to equity ratio is 0, so there is no debt. So you take weight of equity is 1, cost of equity is what we have here, which is 14.6. Weight of the debt is 0. The cost of the debt for board rating A is 0, so therefore it's 14.6. Let's do the second one for B. For B, how much the weight of equity? It's not 0.75. Now, that's debt to equity ratio. Are you together? So for BB like that, that's the same as 0.25 is to, this is not the proportion of the debt. You are told it's debt to equity ratio. That's a ratio. So that means 0.2 is to 1. So the total will be 0.2. You add 1, you get 1.25. Can you take 0.25 you divide by 1.25 to get the debt? 0.25 you divide by 1.25. 0. Now that's the debt. So how much will be the equity? 0.8. The cost of equity we have computed is 16.28 plus. Now 0.2 is the weight of the debt. And the cost of the debt for board rating BB is 8.5. Let's go to BB. Debt to equity ratio, it's 0.6. That means 0.6 is to 1. So if you add the two, you get 1.6. So to get the debt, you take 0.6, you divide by 1.6. To get the equity, you take 1, you divide by 1.6. So give me for the equity, 1 over 1.6. 0.6? 625. So Equity, it's 0.625. You multiply by the cost of equity, which is 18.6, plus the weight of the debt. 1 minus 625, that is 0.375. And the cost of the debt for board rating BB is 10%. And then here you're not taking into account tax rate, because that was the before tax cost of the debt. 1 minus 0.3, 1 minus 0.3, 1 minus 0.3. Let's do 4C. The debt to equity ratio is 1.7. So that is to 1. So it will be 2.7. So to get for the equity, you just take 1, you divide by 2.7. The weight of the equity is how much? 0. Yes? 37. So the weight of the equity will be 0.37. You multiply by the cost of equity, 25.8. Therefore, the weight of the debt will be 0.63. And the cost of the debt for say it's 14%. So it's 14, 1 minus 0.3. Lastly, D. For D, debt to equity ratio is 2.5. That means the debt is 2.5 times of the equity. So it's 2.5 is to 1. So the total is 3.5. So to get the equity, you just take 1 divided by 3.5. You get 0. Sorry? 2.29. So the cost of the weight of the equity is 0.29. Cost of equity is that 1.4. Then you add the weight of the debt, it will be 0.7. You multiply by the cost of the debt, which is 16. Second, 14.21%. Sorry? First one, 14.6. Which one? That is 17.1. Sorry? 14.72%. Then you take the minimum. The minimum is 18.81. So that's BB. So now the question was the optimal capital structure. So optimal capital structure is where the debt and the equity. This is BB. So that means it's where the equity it's 0.625. That represents 62.5% of the total capital. So that's the equity. And then the debt, it's that 7.5. That 7.5%. Then number 2 of the question is the optimal WACC, of which we have it's 11.89%. Can take a screenshot of that. May 2019, question 4B. Zian Limited, an unlevered farm, so the farm is ungeared, has in issue 10 million ordinary share that are currently selling at the security exchange at 20 million. So if the company is ungeared, they have 10 shares, 10 million shares, they don't have the debt. So can you be able to get the value of the company? So to get the value of the farm, that's the ungeared farm, it's simple. They don't have the debt, they only have the equity. So just take the number of shares, 10 million, and the market price per share is 20. So that means the value of the company is 200 million. Additional information. The farm most recent earnings per share is 4 shillings and adopts 100% dividend payout ratio. How much is the dividend per share? Nasema muniangalie, nimesema munipe jina. Ajibu. How much is the dividend per share? Sio ni Kiingereza? Mnaona ngapi? Na if you're using your calculator, hakuna kitu ya kucalculate hapo. Ni ngapi? Yeah, see earnings per share is 4 and you're paying 100%. So that means the dividend per share is how much? 4. Good. It's expected that the farm future dividend in each year will remain constant in perpetuity. The firm is considering to issue 12% new debenture. If the firm issues new debenture, so that means the state will change from being ungeared to geared. 12% new debenture to raise 50 million in order to finance an expansion program. This will effectively change the status of the firm from unlevered to levered firm. The firm pays corporate tax rate of 30%. Required. Using Modigliani and Miller proposition, determine number 1, cost of equity before and after the issue of long-term debt. Cost of equity before. So before it's ungeared state. Ungeared firm. And how do we get the value of ungeared firm? To get the value of ungeared firm using Modigliani and Miller, it's earning before interest or tax 1 minus T cost of equity of ungeared firm. So now what we are looking is this the cost of equity. So make it the subject. To get the cost of equity of ungeared firm, you take EBIT 1 minus T over the value of ungeared firm. Now EBIT, you minus the tax, you'll get the total earnings, or you get the total earnings. Because this is a profit before tax, 1 minus T you tax to get the total earnings. And how do you get the total earnings? Number 1, you are given the earnings per share was 4. And the company has 10 million shares. So that means the total earnings was how much? Ngapi? Good. Then you divide by the value of ungeared firm, which is 200. Then you multiply by 100. 40 over 200. Is that 20%? What are you getting? 20%. Then we also to determine before and after the issue of long-term debt. If you issue the long-term debt, the company will change its status, now becomes a geared firm. And how do we get the cost of equity of geared firm? According to the cost of equity of levered firm is the cost of equity of ungeared, cost of equity on geared, cost of the debt over equity, 1 minus T. And how do we get the value of the levered firm? Is the value of ungeared plus present value interest tax shield benefits. The value of ungeared firm we have is 200 present value interest tax sheet, you see that you take the tax rate, which is 30%, you multiply by the value of the debt. How much is the debt? 50 million. That's 15. So it will be 215. Once we have that, we say that the value of the firm is made up of the value of the equity plus the value of the debt. The value of this firm is 215. We need to get the value of the equity. The value of the debt, we are using a debt of 50 million. How much would be the value of the equity? You take 215 minus 50. The value of the equity will be 165. Now, let's get the cost of equity of the levered firm. Cost of equity of ungeared is 20%. Cost of equity is 20%. The cost of the debt, we are planning to issue a new 12% debenture. Debt over equity. That's why you are computing this. The value of the debt is 50 million. Over equity, the value of the equity is 165. 1 minus T, 0.7. So give me the cost of equity of the levered firm. Sorry? 20.7%. Yes. Which one? Cost of it here. This is after tax. You see, we say this, you take EBIT 1 minus T. And I say that if you take the earning you tax, this was EBIT, right? Once you tax, you get profit after tax, of which that's where you're given the earnings per share. So the earnings per share, that's the profit after tax per share. Eh? So it's already taxed. So it's not, you see these 4, it's already taxed. That's earnings per share. You multiply by the number of shares to determine how much was the total earnings. And the total earnings is net of tax. So it's okay the way it is. Number 2 of the question. Weighted average cost of capital before and after the issue of the debt. Number 2, we have to get WACC. Before, that's for ungeared firm. We say that the cost of equity of ungeared firm is the same as WACC. Therefore, that's 20%. Then after, that's the geared state. We need to get WACC. Weight of equity, cost of equity. Weight of the debt, cost of the debt, 1 minus T. Weight of equity, the value of the equity is 165. So you take 165, you divide by the value of the firm, which is 215. You multiply by the cost of equity, and the cost of equity of levered firm we have is 21.7. Weight of the debt is 50 million. You divide by the total value of the firm, which is 215. You multiply by the cost of the debt, and the cost of the debt was 12%. 1 minus T. Give me 1 kaka. You getting? 18.6%. Number 3. Number 3. The current market value of the firm before and after, the market value of the firm. The value of ungeared firm, the value of the levered firm, we have computed everything. Give me the value of ungeared firm. 200. Give me the value of a levered firm. 215. Let's go to number 4. Advise the management of Zion Limited on whether to change the capital structure. They should change. They should change. Why? Yes? The farm? Yeah, the value of the river. You see the value of ungeared farm, this current state, the value of the farm is 200. When you use the debt, the value will increase to 215. What about in terms of the cost? The cost of ungeared farm or WACC was 20%. Let's just use this. The WACC or the weighted cost of capital was 20. If you use the debt, what will happen to the cost of capital? It has reduced. So therefore, they should change. That means they should use the debt in its capital structure to change its state from being ungeared to geared farm. Good. So we can still do another question. November 2016, question 3. Part A of the question, explain the reassumption of the traditional theory of capital structure. That's right. If you don't remember. If you remember, you don't have to write. One, the cost of the debt is always lower than the cost of equity. Cost of the debt is always lower than the cost of equity. And is it the reason being what? Yeah, the cost of the debt always attracts the interest tax shield benefits. Number 2, increased use of the debt in the capital structure. Increased use of the debt in the capital structure does not affect the cost of the debt. Increased use of the debt in the capital structure does not affect the cost of the debt up to a given relevant range. Up to a given relevant range. Up to a given relevant range. Assumption number 3. Capital structure is relevant. Capital structure is relevant since it affects the cost of the equity, the cost of capital, since it affects the cost of capital, since it affects the cost of capital and the value of the firm, and the value of the firm. Yeah, you see, unlike the mod MM, it is stated that their capital structure is what? Irrelevant. Yeah, traditional theory says that it's relevant. Let's go to part B. Maju Limited is just about to commence operation as an international trading company. The firm will have a book value of assets of 320 million, and it's expected to earn 16% return on this asset before interest and taxes. So the expected EBIT, 16%. However, because of certain arrangement with the foreign government, the company will not pay any taxes. It is known that the capitalization rate of all equity firm in this business is 12%. So cost of equity of an geared firm is 12%. The company can borrow a debt finance at the rate of 7 per annum. Cost of the debt is 7%. The management is in the process of deciding how to raise the required 10 million debt finance. Debt finance, so of 10. Assume that the Morgan and Miller assumptions apply, required. Using without taxes. So this one is without taxes. Determine number 1. The current value of an geared firm. So how do we get the value of an geared firm? EBIT 1 minus T, cost of equity of an geared firm. EBIT 51.2. But in this case, there is no taxes. So there is no 1 minus T. Then you divide by the cost of equity of an geared firm, which is 12%. How much is the value of the firm? Sorry? 4.67. Number 2. Number 2. The current value of Rivered Farm, if it uses 10 million of 7% debt. So the value of the Rivered Farm will still be 426.6. Is that correct? Yeah, when there is no taxes, assuming there is no taxes, the value of geared farm and the value of the Rivered will be the same. Okay, according to how do you get the value of the Rivered Farm? Sorry? Can you give me how do you get this? We are doing revision. So mnajua Kenya tunafanya. Value of ungeared farm. So how much is the value of ungeared farm? 426.67. You add present value 30%. But in this case, there is no debt. There is no tax. So the tax rate will be 0%. We're using a debt of how much? Let's go to number 3. WACC, if the Rivered Farm at the debt level of 7% shillings 10 million, the WACC for the Rivered Farm. So how do we get WACC? Weight of equity, cost of equity, weight of the debt, cost of the debt, 1 minus T. But in this case, there is no taxes. So the value of the Rivered Farm, the value of the farm is equal to value of equity plus the value of the debt. The value of the Rivered Farm is 426.67, should be equal to the value of the equity, and they're using a debt of 10. Therefore, the value of the equity will be how much? 416.67. Now with that, we have the weights. We have the cost of the debt. We don't have the cost of equity. Cost of equity of Rivered Farm is the cost of equity of ungeared, cost of equity of ungeared minus the cost of the debt, debt over equity ratio 1 minus T, but there is no tax. The cost of equity of ungeared firm is 12. 12 minus the cost of the debt, which is 7. Debt to equity ratio, debt is 10, equity is 416.67. You get 12.12%. So let's get WACC. Weight of equity, we have the value of the equity, which is 416.67. You divide by the value of the firm, which is 426.67. You multiply by the cost of equity, which is 12.12, plus weight of the debt is 10 million. You divide by the value of the firm, which is 426.67. Then you multiply by the cost of the debt. How much is the cost of the debt? me the answer. You get? Just 12. Good. Now let's go to part C of the question. Assuming that the company in B above now pays taxes at the rate of 30%. Compute the following in a Modiglian Admira world. Now assuming there is taxes. One is the current value of the firm if it uses no debt. If it uses no debt, that's the value of ungeared firm. EBIT 1 minus T cost of equity of ungeared. EBIT is 51.2, 1 minus 0.3, cost of equity of ungeared is 12%. $298.67. Number two. The current value of the firm, if it uses a debt level of 7%, 10 million. If there is a debt, so that one becomes revered. So the value of the revered is value of ungeared, present value interest tax shield. The value of ungeared we have is 298.67. 30% of the debt. You're using a debt of how much? So you'll get let's go to number 3. WACC at the 7% debt level. So we get WACC, weight of equity, cost of equity, weight of the debt, cost of the debt, 1 minus T. The value of the firm, value of equity, value of the debt. Value of the firm, 301.67. Value of equity, the debt will always be constant and they're using a debt of 10. So therefore the value of the equity is 291.67. We have the weights. We get the cost of equity of revered firm. To get the cost of equity of revered firm, the cost of equity of ungeared is 12. 12. How much is the cost of the debt? Debt over equity. Debt is 10. Equity is 291.67. 1 minus T is 0.7. Sorry? Get 12.1%. So therefore, let's get WACC. You take the weight of equity. Equity, you take 291.67 over the value of the firm, which is 301.67. You multiply by the cost of equity, which is 12.12. Weight of the debt, 10 million. 301.67. The cost of the debt is 7%. 1 minus T, 1 minus 0.3. $11.8. It's just a simple question with 20 marks. So this one will not actually exceed 1 page. If you get 20 marks, and then yesterday we did a question, was it yesterday on Saturday? We did question 2. Can you be able to do the question number 2 of the same sitting? Part A is explain the challenges likely to be encountered in the application of CAPM. limitation of CAPM, the assumption, those are 6 marks. Part B, the Moses Mapesa, correlation coefficient, portfolio risk. Then part C we did yesterday. So those are 40 marks. Then question one, we did it in class, right? So part B was part of the illustration. Simulation model. That's another 14 marks. 40 plus 14, that's 54. You just need to do 3 questions for you to pass. And now the problem with you is 1. Do you know your weakness? Question number 5, you have a lot of theories there. Part D, 2 shortcoming of bracket score, option pricing model. Do you remember anything about bracket score? Remember nothing. Yeah, yes, Sako remembers anything. Something. What was one of the assumptions of bracket score? Actually, there were 8 assumptions. Sorry? It's only? Yeah, it's only applicable in European option only. Perfect. That means cannot be used in other. Also, I take the screenshots. That's what you are good at. May 2018, question 4B. Ragdara Limited, an unlevered firm operating the textile industry. The firm current capital structure is summarized as follows: ordinary share capital, share premium, retained earnings. So there is no debt. So the firm is ungeared. The firm is considering borrowing 10% debt finance of 40 million in order to finance the expansion program, making it a levered firm. Additional information. The annual earnings before interest and tax generated by the firm is 60 million. This is expected to remain constant each year in perpetuity. The firm ordinary share are currently trading at market price per share 200 at the security exchange. Corporate tax rate is 30%. Required. Using Morgan and Miller approach and the information provided above, analyze the financial implication of the change in the capital structure of Ragdara Limited. That's capital structure restructuring. So how do you determine the implication? You see the company currently is ungeared. Then it changes to ungeared. So what do you consider? You need to compute WACC and the value of the firm, as simple as that. So we start with the ungeared state. We start by determining the cost of capital. And how do we get the cost of equity of ungeared firm? The cost of equity of ungeared firm is the same as WACC. To get the cost of equity of ungeared firm, we say that you take EBIT 1 minus T over the value of ungeared firm. How much is your EBIT? 60. 1 minus T, 1 minus 0.3. How much is the value of ungeared firm? The value of ungeared firm, they don't have the debt. Can you go to the ordinary share capital? Ordinary share capital is 120 million divided by the par value, which is 50, you get the number of shares. Once you get the number of shares, you multiply by the current market price per share. How much is the current market price per share? 200. So how much is the value of ungeared firm? 1? 480. Good. Divide by 480. And you get the cost of equity of ungeared firm. $8.75%. Then let's now determine, we already have the value of the firm. We have said that to compute the cost of equity and then determine the value of the firm. We have everything. Now let's go to the geared state. If they use the debt, how do we get the value of the levered firm? So the value of the levered firm, value of ungeared, present value, interest, tax, shield, benefits. How much is the value of ungeared firm? 480. Present value, interest, tax, shield, you take the tax rate, which is 30%. You multiply by the value of the debt. So they are planning to use a debt of how much? 40. That's 12. You get 492. Once we have that, the value of the firm is made up of the value of the equity plus the value of the debt. The value of the firm is 492. Value of equity. The value of the debt, they're using a debt of 40. So how much will be the value of equity? You get 452. So our objective is to determine the cost of capital. And to get the cost of capital, you must get the cost of equity of the levered firm. Cost of equity of ungeared. How much is the cost of equity of ungeared firm? How much is the cost of the debt? How much the value of the debt? How much the value of the equity? $8.67. Now with that, let's get WACC. Weight of equity, cost of equity. Weight of the debt, cost of the debt, 1 minus T. Weight of equity, you take the value of the equity, 452, over the value of the firm, which is 492, times the cost of equity, which is 8.67. Weight of the debt is 40 million over 492, times the cost of the debt, which is 10%, 1 minus 0.3. Eight point 8.53%. Now look at that. What are the financial implications? Take a screenshot. That one is so quick to take a screenshot. Yeah, take a screenshot. Do you want me to show you how to interpret that? You just copy and interpret for yourself. June 2009, question 4. June 2009, question 4. Patel Limited, a computer assembly company, intends to expand its operations. This will require an expansion of its assets by 50%. So how much is the capital required? I have asked you, do you know your weakness? Mukasema hamjui. Now, do you see your weakness now? Why in class I can take 5 minutes to do a question, but you take 2 hours to do a question? Because you read the question to finish, not to understand. You see, up to that point, just reading the first sentence, but you didn't read it to understand. Kila mtu sasa amesoma tena. Sasa shida umesoma na hamjaelewa bado. Sisi mnasema John Mark is good kumchongoa. Si mchongoa. You know the good thing na mabianga ukweli, eh? I've been in this field for long. Now that's the problem of students, eh? Somo amalize. First reading. Second reading. Anapata 10%. Third reading, you inakuanga serious. Then the moment tunamaliza yote tunakuja kukumbuka you forgot the concept. Eh? So you jump that question and go to another question. So, and that's why I have actually, if you follow what I have been doing, I am not just reading the question to finish the question. You see, in every step, I usually do read. Naandika Kenya nimesoma. The capitalization rate, when there is no debt, naandika vizuri. The earning EBIT is 10% of that, naandika hapo. Now the problem is that hata nikiandika nimuulize how much the cost of the debt, mnaanza kuitafuta tena huko. Na nishaandika, eh? But they do usually manage to do the paper within the 3 hours guidelines. But FM you can manage because you have nothing to write. Eh? But if you have a content, eh? I think 3 hours is limited. Eh? But you see, 3 hours, I think it's more time for a student, for an average student. Eh? When I talk about an average student, eh? That's your level now. 3 hours, I think it's more than enough. No. Even if you are given 5 hours, you will not finish. It's all about the approach. Are you together? It's all about the approach. Now, you know, by the first reading, actually, this is what you can do. Eh? When you are given a paper, don't rush to answer. Even you can look at the required. If you're given a paper, just without reading the question, just go to the required. If you see EPS at point of indifference A and B, automatically that shows you which topic is that. You read the question required, post-acquisition EPS, automatically your mind inakwambia this is mergers and acquisition. So the formula start flowing. Lakini kusoma swali required, then unasahau kenye ulikuwa umesoma unaanza kusoma tena. Dennis. So now let's do that question. I'm trying to give you the tips on how to do this one in an exam. Eh? Isi kumchongoa ni kwa inamwambia, eh? So if you're a smart student, take my advice. Sio kusoma tu malize then usome tena. Some mara ya 3 uone kabisa hakuna kitu umeelewa. Then after 1 hour you have finished the question. Na hakuna kitu umeandika. And there is a unit which is easier to pass is FM. FM is very hard for you. Sometimes it might be nightmare. But this is the paper that most of the students usually passes because the pass mark will always be lower. The markers always understand the student. But now the problem is that once you don't know what the examiner wants, utaandika nini? You start spreading rumors. Actually, usually write the rumors. He's asking about mortgage and Miller. You start writing about money market. Telling rumor in that is your answer sheet. You know, sometimes we try to read these your answers paka tunacheka. Napata mwingine amekuandikia na hapo nyuma mostly FM ama FR. Kindly the marker. This is my last attempt. Mwingine andika namba yake. This is my number. So kindly make me pass. I'll give you something. That's the weakness. I was sick when I was doing the paper, so kindly. Na mwenye unapata wameandika hivyo, hakuna kitu anakuwa ameandika ndani. Prank. So let's go through that. Patel Limited, a computer assembly company intended to expand its operation. This will require an expansion of its asset by 50%. So, amount required, we need to expand our asset by 50%. How much is the total asset? 96. You get 40? That's the first step. Then we are told that the annual incremental sales to be generated by this expansion are estimated to be 18 million with annual increment EBIT of 25% on the incremental sales. All the financing for this expansion will come from the external sources of profit, as profit retentions are already committed elsewhere. A financial analyst hired by the company has submitted the following proposal of financing and expansion for consideration. Plan A, issue 10% debentures. Plan B, issue of 10% debenture for half of the required amount and issue of ordinary shares at 25 premium for the remaining balance of the amount. Plan C, issue of ordinary share at 25% premium. The financial statement of the company for the financial year ended 30th of April 2009 are shown below. So you are given the equity and liability, we are given the assets. Now, can you go to the equity? The equity, we have ordinary share capital, we have debenture. So that means the company has both the debt and the equity in the capital structure. The tax rate is 30% required. Number one, the number of ordinary share to be issued under financial plan B and C. Number A is the shares to be issued under plan B and C. So let's start with plan B. Plan B, we are told that issue of 10% debenture for the half of the required amount and issue ordinary share at 25% premium for the remaining balance of the amount. So how much will you issue from the equity under plan B? It's 50%, half. 50% of the required amount. How much is the required amount? 40. So how much do you need? So how do we get the number of shares to issue? Number of shares to issue, you just take the amount to raise, you divide by the issue price. And the amount to raise is 24, and you are given the issue price. Now let's go to note number 2. We issue them at 25% premium. So can you give me the issue price? Compute for me the issue price. You are given is 25% of the share. You should be through by now. You are getting? I can see everyone is using a calculator, but you don't give me the answer you are getting. Eh? What are you getting at the issue price? Yeah. Issue price. The par value is 10. You multiply by 125%, you get 1.25. So I mean 12.5. How many shares will we issue? Yes? 1920. Let's go to Plan C. Plan C, issue of ordinary share at 25% premium. So that means the full amount of 48 will come from the issue of share, and still you're issuing at a premium of 25%. So the issue price will be 12.5. So how many shares will we issue? It's double of this. That's 38.40, right? Let's go to part B of the question. The earnings per share indifference point between indifference point. So we say that at point of indifference, the earnings per share for all the option will be the same. So now let's evaluate that. I want us to evaluate for all the plans. We start with plan A. Now plan A, we are to issue of 10% debenture. So if you issue 10% debenture and you're looking at EPS, how do we get the EPS when the company has both the equity and the debt in the capital structure? Equity and debt financed. So to get earnings per share, you take EBIT minus the interest, 1 minus T over the number of shares. EBIT minus the interest, let's get the interest. Currently, based on the current capital structure, the company has a debt of 8% debenture. So it's 8%, and they are paying for 24 million. Then plan A is issue 10% of the debenture. 10%. How much amount do we need to raise? Yes, give me the answer. So we'll be paying a combined interest of how much? 67.20. So the interest is 67.20. 1 minus T is 0.7. Then you divide by the number of shares. We are not issuing more share. So how many shares? Ordinary share capital is that 2,000, and the par value is 10. So we have that 200 shares. So let's simplify this. 0.7 EBIT, you get 0.7 EBIT. 0.7 you multiply by 67.20. 47? 0.4. Then you divide by that too. Plan B. Plan B, we have to issue half debenture, half shares. So the company will still be debt and equity finance. So therefore, to get earnings per share, you take EBIT, you deduct the interest. So let's determine the interest. Currently, they have 8% debenture of 24 million plus plan B, issue 10% debenture for the half of the amount. We need 48, so the half is the other 24. So let's issue a debenture worth 24. So how much will be the total interest? Sorry? 43.20. So then 1 minus T, it's 0.7 over the number of shares. Currently, our capital structure, we have that 2 million, each at 10, to get the current number of shares. Then in part A, we have computed the number of shares to issue under plan B, and the number of shares to issue was 1920. So of the current share you have, you add an additional 1920. You get 51? 51.20. So the number of shares is 51.20. Let's cross we multiply 0.7 EBIT minus 43.20 times 0.7. 30.24 divided by the number of shares, which is 51.20. Plan C. Plan C, we are to issue ordinary share at 25% premium. So the company will still be equity and debt finance. So to get the earnings per share, we take EBIT minus the interest. So in this case, we are not issuing more debt. So the interest will only remain the one we have, the 8% of 24 How much is that? Sorry? 9020. 1920. So the interest is 1920. 1 minus t is 0.7. You divide by the number of shares. Current rate is that 2,000. You divide by the par value to get the number of shares. Then plan C, in number A, we have computed the number of new shares to issue. And plan C, we have to issue new that 840 shares. So now we'll be having a total of how many shares? That's 7040. 7040. So 0.7 EBIT, you get 0.7 EBIT. 1920, you multiply by 0.7. 1324. 1340. 44. Then you divide by 7040. So now let's go to the required part B. The earnings per share in difference point between plan A and B. So number one, we know that at point of indifference, earnings per share for option A will be the same as earnings per share for option B. You already have the EPS for plan A. It's 0.7 EBIT minus 4704. We divide by that 2 should be the same as earnings per share for plan B, which we have it's 0.7 EBIT minus that 24. You divide by 5120. Let's cross multiply. 0.7 you multiply by 5120. That 584 EBIT minus 4704 you multiply by 5120. Yes? 2408. Sorry? 4480 is equals to, let's cross multiply. That 200 you multiply by 0.7, you get 20. 2240. 2240 EBIT minus that 200 you multiply by that 24. 96. Sorry? 776. 76. 800. So let's bring the right term together. That 584 EBIT minus 2240 EBIT. Yes? 44. 44 EBIT. Take this to the other side. This one becomes positive, right? So 24. You get? It can't be 33. Or it's 33. 3 million. 47. 6. Now give me EBIT. 10.7. Now that's EBIT. Now, if you have EBIT, now you can be able to get earnings per share. Substitute either option 1 or plan A or plan B. It should give you the same answer. Can everyone compute, including Dennis? How much are you getting? Sorry? 0.87. Then you do part B, then you do part C, it's the same process. So do what you like. Don't be afraid, eh? Just take a screenshot. Because you have taken the screenshot for this, will you still revise that? No, you don't have to revise actually. Go and concentrate on other units or other topics. Because actually from when we started, we have just repeated MM. Before me mistake, circle. Yes. WACC, cost of equity of levered firm, value of levered firm. So don't have to waste time repeating that. So kindly be conversant with the following topics. One is that financing decision. For the cost of capital, WMCC, and then the assumptions. Number two, portfolio theory. CAPM, and then portfolio measurement. Portfolio performance measures. That's trainers, Jensen's. Number three, risk analysis in capital budgeting, sensitivity analysis, simulation. Number four, derivative and money market. Mergers and acquisition. So go through types of mergers. And then how to evaluate. And then theories. You have rates. That's real estate accounting. You have the notes in your handout. Actually, the last pages. And then emerging issues, cryptocurrency. Now, what is cryptocurrency? Bitcoin. Those are emerging issues. Now, the good thing is that two of the questions will be the one we have exactly done in class. So if you are good in what you have been doing, two of the questions, most of the computation, mostly portfolio, also at mergers and acquisitions. So two of the questions will be the one we have done in class. So kindly go through that. Just you need to polish. You have nothing to revise. Kama hujasoma saizi, do you think you can make a change? So yesterday there was a student who came to us. He was looking for me. So he met Mr. Lawrence. and ask Mr. Lawrence, can I pass with the remaining 1 week? So I was reasoning from the other side. So now he was given false hopes. So then he was transferred to me. I just told him, you'll not pass. So kindly go and relax, do it next semester. Why? You know, I'm the teacher. I told you I've been doing this for 6 years. That's why I'm a teacher. Nikamwambia, you don't have. So why do you have to stress your employer who believe ya mwezi moja 2 weeks? Then when they uanguke. So there is no difference. So you just focus on your work. This do it next semester. So because that was advanced financial reporting. Utamfunza nini, utaacha nini? And then miaka yake imesonga kidogo. It's not like it's not a youngster. So, kuna haja ni mdanganye? Ati utapita. Nimwambia hautapita kitu. So you just go home, relax, start revising as early as possible. Hakuna kubahatisha. You see now, akisema ni kubahatisha, you will take a leave. So why do you have to stress yourself for the uanze kuamka 6 ama 4 na utaanguka tu? The probability ya kupita based on how I know the paper fari itakuwa, the probability is 2%. So there is no need. So actually that was the last class for AFM. Don't expect in the class. We have covered everything. What have we not covered? We did portfolio. We did financing decision. We did mergers. We did corporate valuation. We did sensitivity analysis. The only topic I didn't do is the money market. And that's what I did before we started our blogs. And after all, I did almost all the questions. So, nikimwambia mkuje tena, I'll be wasting my time because just be listening to me. So you just go and have confidence. But only confidence kama umesoma. Kama hujasoma, don't think saizi ati unaanza kusoma. There was a student who bought up. Alinunua kitambo when the semester started. Jana alikuwa ananipigia anauliza, mwalimu hapo inafanya kazi aje? So now you ask yourself, anasoma. So why don't you sacrifice umaliza na hivi vitu, mwache hii mambo ya the gubaro thing, Maliza na hii kitu, mwache stress. I know for you have pressure, job, family. John Mark anakuja na mchongo hapa. After all, you have to balance. So why don't you just sacrifice this? Sako, acha na mpira saizi. Saizi sacrifice for this just 1 week. Okay, ikiwa harusi saizi usiende. Sawa sawa. Ama ni aje? Rona, acha na baby shower. Sawa sawa. Yeah, just sacrifice. So all the best. So now then, in case you have any question for AFM, a disclaimer, don't ask me. Sawa. Nimemaliza everything. In case you have a question, you just consult other students. Don't come to me. Mimi nimefunga kazi yangu based on AFM. All the best. And kind of don't go and write rumors. Mwende muandike kitu enye mmefunzwa.